Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the morning, 15 minutes to hopefully change your life. Continue on this Ahavas Yisroel. We've been discussing some questions about the war with Midian, and what was going on over there. Why did everyone need to go wage a war? And what was connected with Moshe, and Moshe's passing away. We said that I have to understand the B'chal in Midian. That Midian is this idea of strife and division and ego, or self-centeredness, as he translates it here. And then we discussed also how in Toyo, which is a world with a lot of but not a lot of keli, and it's like different people not being able to join together, and that's people that, so to speak, get into arguments because they can't really come together other things. Whereas Midian, we're saying, is like the whole concept of it, sort of the source of this division. Yeah, and that's essentially what we're saying. So we'll go from the top of 28. So we're talking about how Midian is baseless hatred. It's the sinas chinam. You hate a person for no real reason. Now and then we said that you're going to give a reason to justify your hatred, but that's not the real reason why you hate the person. You hate them, and you just give excuses. And it's really essentially because of Yeshus. Whereas by the Kedusha, by the Shema Havayim, holiness, it's bittul. You leave space for other people. And that, yeah. And that's also the difference in the world around us. That's when we have Kedusha, when we're in a mood of bittul, like we said yesterday, it doesn't mean that you're a nobody. It just means that you have space for other people because you're connected. You feel if a life of bittul is a life without you don't take up space, whereas Yeshus take up space. So it's like when you have 10 people full of Yeshus in one room, so the room is very full, even though it could be a big room. Whereas when you have bittul with 10 people, so you have plenty of space. Bittul means a simple English is like a person sitting next to you. And it's like when you go to 770 and it's packed. You have Yeshus, so it's too crowded and it's uncomfortable, and everyone's in my space. When you have bittul, there's plenty of space for everybody. I'm not talking about a person that has issues of claustrophobic and things like this. I'm saying just normally. Page 28. Because of his Yeshus, he does not leave room for anyone else. He compels him, as a word, to view another's existence as distracting from his own. Therefore, he cannot tolerate that person. Thus, it is primarily his own Yeshus that leads him to view another person as an opponent. So it's very interesting. He's saying that the person is an opponent, or the person is negative, not because that person is negative, there's anything wrong with that person, because of our own Yeshus. And we complain that this person is this, or like the story about the Tzemach Tzedek, it's like everyone is stepping on me. It's not their problem, it's your problem. Put your Yeshus, you're getting in the way. So, it's like you walk into a conversation, you start speaking about the conversation, they start arguing with you, and you're like, whoa, why is everyone arguing with me? No one asked you to join the conversation, no one asked you to put in your opinion. And you know what I mean? So the concept explained here is, so that's the story of Tzemach Tzedek. As we said this yesterday, that he complained that everyone is stepping on him everywhere he goes. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, what do you expect when you put yourself, you lie yourself everywhere. You get yourself opportunity to get stepped on. So he's opposition to the other person is not to a specific factor. Instead, he sees a challenge to his entire existence. The mere existence of another person detracts from his Yeshus and prompts him to view others as opponents, making it impossible for him to tolerate them. In contrast, the realm of holiness is characterized by bittul. Yeah. As Alter says in Tanya, the realm of holiness encompasses only entities upon which the holiness of the Holy must be he rests, can be extended to. And he rests only on such entities that are bottled to him. That in order for Hashem, it says, Hashem says that he and I can't live in the same place. In the sense that if there's Yeshus, then there's no space for God. Whereas if there's bittul, so then there's space. When an entity is concerned with itself, it closes itself off to godliness. Conversely, by rising above self-concern, it or he leaves place for him. Whereas when we move above our self-concern, and we think about godliness and God and our mission in life, so then we have opportunities to bring God in. But when it's all about ourselves, I don't have time to daven or learn or to do things. I have to take care of myself. And I have to make sure I get more sleep, and I have to have self-care, as people say. Now, of course, there's a certain amount of genuine self-care, but people get it, like misunderstood. And he's saying when you put godliness at the forefront, and the more bottle to that you have, the more space you have for God, which is ultimate, and also the more space you have for everyone else. By saying he leaves room for others, we mean that he accepts them and becomes one with them. When a person's mindset and his character about bittul, he has the space within his mind to appreciate the positive qualities that every person possesses, and appreciates how that person has a role to play in creating God's dwelling in our world. As a result, he seeks to become one with them. It's like I remember once when I was a kid, I was younger. There was a guy. I used to daven in a Friday shul on Shabbos, and there was a guy. He was like an agra, always like unhappy, and some like Israeli Lubavitcher ended up coming to Australia like to shlichus. He was like a bacher for like the backpackers, and he would daven in the shul sometimes. There was a lot of Israelis there, and he was like the sweetest person in the world. He had bittul muchlet. He was always loving and caring and warm and had space for everyone else. Whereas this other guy was always grumpy, and everyone else always bothered him. And so one time he got furious, this grumpy man, that someone was talking during like Tishach. So that's shots, and talking, and he was was literally red in the face. And so this chassid tried to calm him down, and he was trying to appease him, and whatever. It's very much I see this concept how one guy couldn't stand it, and it's so to speak, someone's davening, someone's making noise outside his shul, and his ears are sensitive enough to be able to hear it on his opposite side of the shul, and it bothers him. This is yashus. Whereas in the guy's batul, the chassid, even when the guy's doing something wrong, instead of coming and complaining and cursing him out, he tries to understand him and try to be open to him and see where he's coming from. Not saying that he doesn't have to fix the person doing something wrong, but the place that it comes from is from love. That's in the sitra achra, the realm of evil. Because of yeshus, the person leaves no room for others. And you think about it. Let's say, like a simple example, any person, your roommate, you go to shul, you go to school, and people come. We don't know what has happened before they came. We set a certain standard of what should happen. I told this once to a person in shul that was complaining about something going on in shul, and I said to him, "You don't understand what a person's been through before he came to shul. And everyone has their pakalach, their issues that they're dealing with and their life struggles. And that person could have been in let's say he was married, and unfortunately, the person could have been in a fight with his spouse before they came. And then he comes, and then you're going to come and start harping on him, and start annoying him about something that's not necessarily that important. And meaning, if you realize that that's what happened to them before they came, would you be nicer to them, or would you treat them the way you're treating them? And that's sort of what he's saying. When it comes from yeshus, so it's always bothering you. When it comes from bittul, there's always room for the other person, and even when they're doing something wrong, there's room for them. And it's not. We're not saying we have to not deal with issues, but I'm just saying that you have that sensitivity that comes with them. Because of yeshus, the person is doing for the other, opposing them because of their very existence. This is the reason for divisiveness and intolerance. Top page 30. By contrast, the of holiness, because of bittul, the person leaves room for others, accepts them, unites with them, and relates with them harmoniously. Whereas the bittul, you see the bittul is total opposite. The yeshus, they exist. That's a problem. It's not that they did anything; their existence is a problem. Whereas by bittul, they're good. Their existence is good. They did something wrong. I can figure it out. Whatever. I can live with it. It's not a big deal. I learn. And this is sort of this is a shlichus. When a person goes on shlichus, that's what they do. They don't come and judge every person, judge a non-from person. Well, what's he doing? How you're not from her? They accept him with love, and they're showing they have this bittul. He takes the bittul. Summary: the cause of basis hatred, i.e., hatred that is not motivated by genuine reason, is yeshus. So if someone bothers you and there's no real reason behind it, it's your yeshus. It's your own issues. The details of and rationalizations for the person's hatred flow only afterwards. Yeah, like I said before, the reasons come after. This yeshus has its roots in the clip of midjan, that is sauce in the self-orientation of the realm of Toil. The opposite of this approach is the bittul that characterizes the realm of holiness. A person leaves room for others, accepting them and relating harmoniously with them. That's holiness. You leave room, you can relate with them, and it's all good things. Whereas Midjan, which is self-orientation, and Toil, so that's nothing, everything's in the way. We'll do the introduction and I'll probably stop it. Introduction to chapters 5 and 7. So in this Hemshech, Heichaltzu, there's a lot of different little memorim. It's not a Hemshech, but I'm saying it's a long, continuous memory, but there's a lot of like sort of subcategories of things. And that's why you'll see every so often he'll bring an introduction. Introduction to chapter 5 and 7. The Rebbe Rashab illustrates the concept of unity amidst diversity. This is very much like we were talking about before. In today's day and age, with the political spectrum in America, also more specifically coming to New York, there's elections coming up. But this is an important point that we should learn to integrate. That unfortunately, when we watch, when we see things, when we get on our phones and different news sources and information, it very much divides us. We have to learn how to not be divisive. How no political issue should be that divisive that we should not be able to talk to our fellow Jew. It's if that's happening, then we miss the whole point of everything, and we should sort of go back to square one and just check out our phones. It's another point, but really, and that's what we're learning here. We're learning how we can compromise and not necessarily compromise, but be there for the other person and have that diversity. And person can have a totally different opinion than you, and even disagree with you, but you can still get along. That's how it should be. So Rashab illustrates this concept of unity and diversity by explaining the oneness that characterizes the soul and its powers. And how do we understand this? Like in Chassidus a lot of times, through learning ourselves and through seeing our own body and how it works, and how on one hand our body is very, very individualistic and has very different parts to it, but it all comes together. Even although the soul comprises of many different, even conflicting potentials, however, since they all emerge from the same core and are filtered through the influence of the mind, all of those soul powers function together as one, with shared purpose. This concept is exemplified through the interrelation of the powers of Chachma and Bina. Chachma and Bina reflect opposing intellectual thrusts. Chachma involves the abstract concept of an idea. That's Chachma, the abstract. And in that experience, one becomes absorbed in that idea to the point that his sense of self is obscured. So when you get totally involved in trying to understand this Chachma idea, so your sense of self totally goes. Bina, by contrast, internalizes a concept within oneself. It seeks to define the concept component by component in the terms of one's existing intellectual framework. Bina is defining it and organizing it. Nevertheless, despite this fundamental difference in nature, whereas Bina is sort of bringing it down, as Chachma is going up, Chachma and Bina function in tandem, interrelating with each other and complementing one another. That's what they do. These explanations lay the backdrop for the fundamental premise of the Maimon, further developed in later chapters, that differences between people need not be a cause for discord. Indeed, with a balanced mindset, it is precisely when each individual develops his own unique potential that the person can complement one another and join hands as a united community. See, and what he's saying here is very, very important, that he's saying that it's not that we should all have the same opinion. It's that every opinion with its diversity can come together. Diversity is a good thing. It's just diversity is not good when it becomes my way or the highway. And so he's saying taking the diversity and joining together. If someone cares about a certain cause that you might not care about, that doesn't mean their cause is not worthy. And even if you think that it's not such an important cause, there's more important causes. That doesn't matter. And maybe that's their shlichus. Maybe that's the thing that they should be doing. They should be trying to fulfill. So that's good. And your cause should be your cause. And really working together, if everyone's working together to fix all the issues that are going on in the world, make the world a much better place. Even though you might say, well, I think it's more important to work on this. Another person might think it's more important to work on this. That's totally fine. You don't all have to do the same thing. You have to learn that diversity and take that separateness and use them together so we can all do good things. To be continued on Monday. Have a good day. Yeah, and I guess so. The practical lesson here is recognize Well, essentially, we summarize what we did yesterday, and talking about here diversity, recognizing ourselves. Do we get along with people that have different opinions, or is it hard for us? I think, unfortunately, nowadays it's becoming very hard. Someone has a different opinion. Someone disagrees with us. Let's say a simple example is in the conflict with Israel and what happened in Israel. And you might talk to someone and they'll have a very different opinion than you. But are we able to get along? And if we're not, the question is, should we be having that discussion? We should be working on ourselves. Is it coming from bittul or not? And if it isn't, then should we be having that discussion? I need to work on my bittul, not my yeshus, sinas chinam, because it's not worth it. Jews fighting is worse than any wars that these people are having. Ahavas chinam is also going to bring Mashiach.